Well, I guess I could say welcome back. More likely, thanks for sticking with me. If you're still watching this, I really appreciate it. I know it's been a huge dry spell. I might be going on almost a year since my last post, actually. Life has just gotten in the way, and I have not had a chance to shoot any video. I have actually had a chance to do some work on the layout, but knowing that I wouldn't have time to edit any video, I didn't record anything. I just started working with what time I had. It was small chunks here and there, and sometimes you were just looking for some stress relief, and I wanted to work on some stuff instead of shooting video. So I apologize for that, and I'm going to show you some clips of the finished shingles plant. I know that I promised a part 3, and so this is kind of a part 2A, I guess. It's the finished result. I ended up shingling the rest of the plant as I did that smaller structure, if you remember that one, or if you didn't, go back and take a look at that, with the aluminum foil pressed in between 2 pieces of styrene to give the corrugated effect, and I clad the whole thing in the siding. And then I took some silos from the Walther's concrete plant and our Medusa cement plant, I think was the kit, and I just took 2 silos from that and some of the supporting structures and the piping up on top and the delivery structure, made that, and a couple smokestacks and things like that. So the other things, the things that I want to touch on, or the things that I want to show today, are a little more quick tidbits. And actually, I have to tip my hat to Luke Towen. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. I'm sure you guys know who he is. He's got awesome videos, and I'll link, in case you haven't seen his videos, I'll definitely link him in the show notes. But while I was watching his videos, I noticed he did a review on clever models, and it, okay, what's that? You know, I hadn't heard of that. And as it turns out, they are meant to be printed on cardstock or whatever, and then you make the structure from that. And so while I was there, I was browsing around their website, and they've got a lot of neat buildings, but they've also got textures. And so one of the things I grabbed, because one of the things you'll see is I've started working on one of the more like the city area of the layout, and so I've got some roads in place, and I want to come back and put some concrete sidewalks in. Getting concrete has never been my specialty. Getting it to look right, that weathered patina look, I've never been able to do that right. But on their website they have these, well, you download them. I think these are $2.50, and you can print them as many times as you want. You get a PDF, and I'll put a link in the show notes to their website. And you get a PDF of this page, and you can print it as many times as you like. So I printed off a whole bunch of these, and so between the corner pieces, you get corners on both sides. You get, you know, sidewalk pieces. You get the grates in here, so you can have storm grates and everything like that. So I'm going to wrap styrene with these and see how that turns out for sidewalks, and I'm going to work on that. Then the other thing I want to share with you guys is something that I created, and this comes from a tip that I got from the, well, it's the January issue of Model Railroader. No, yes, January issue of Model Railroader. The gentleman in there was looking to make street signs, and I've been kind of looking for the same thing, especially now that I'm working on this street, the city scene, if you will. And so if you go to road traffic signs, don't quote me on that, I'm going to show notes, whatever the link is down there is the correct sign. But anyway, they sell full-size signs that you can buy for everything, you know, so you can either as decorative, or if you're in a municipality, I'm sure you could order signs from them, but they've got everything: street signs, stop signs, you know, whatever. So what he recommended, what he did, is you can save the images, which are very low resolution, but for our purposes they don't need to be high resolution because we're shrinking them down anyway. So what I did was I went and I downloaded a whole bunch of them, and they're probably not going to show up real well on here, but in PowerPoint I took all the GIF images, and they're either GIF or PNG files. I put them in, scaled them for HO, replicated them a whole bunch of times, and then printed them. And so now I've got stop signs, railroad crossing signs, yield, you name it, they've got everything. And so I just kind of printed up what I thought I would do, but I threw a whole bunch of them on this. So I'll share the PowerPoint, and again, a link, and so you can download this. And if you work in another scale, all you'll have to do is scale these accordingly, and they should print out just fine. He used them for N scale, I'm obviously using them for HO scale, but these should get you a whole bunch of quality street signs. And so what I've started doing, and I'll show you the technique, I use a soda can that I opened up, cut up, and then just laid out. And so then I, using some heavy duty double stick tape, and I wish I could tell you, my dad got me this years ago, and this stuff holds like the bejeepers. I mean, this stuff is great. So I put a layer of this down on the foil that's left from the soda can, and then I attached the paper to it and then cut it out. So you get a nice silver back on the back of the sign, as if it was a metal sign, and it also gives the sign some rigidity so it doesn't flop all over. And so there's a street sign. Then I'm just using a piece of wire. I haven't decided on the optimal attachment, but so I'll go through how we make those a little bit more in detail. So that's the layout. I'll give you a quick tour of what I've got going, what I've finished, and then we'll go into a couple of the things that I'm working on.
So the quick tour of the layout, in the background here, I went ahead and carved some pink foam, painted it, and applied it to the background just to give some more kind of varied background. I also painted the background a little bit. Didn't put trees in yet, got to get to that. This is the completed completed shingles plant. So you can see there's the smokestacks. Those are the two grain towers from the Medusa cement plant. I weathered those the same way I did the grain towers in my previous project. And then this is the aluminum siding that I made into corrugated metal. This building is a little beat up. I gotta come back and clean these up a little bit. You can see they're bending in the wrong places. So, and then here, zoom in on the asphalt, and then also on the chain link fence. And this I touched on the old grain silo video. It's just old window screen, and then the posts there, the yellow posts, are just copper wire that I cut to length and painted yellow. And then this is the previous building that I showed in a different video. So this is the city scene that I've started working on. I've had these buildings sitting around for quite a while, and the road system here that I've started working on is a technique that I picked up off of Model Railroad Hobbyist website, off their forums, and I'll throw a link in the show notes on that. And then I also touch on it later on in the video on how I did it. It's still a work in progress. I'm still trying to perfect the technique, but I kind of like the results so far. And the lines I just made with some Sharpie pens and a template that I made, and I'll show that as well. So to start making the signs, the first thing I did obviously was cut apart an old soda can, flattened it out, and turned it inside out here. And I'm applying this double-sided sticky tape to the painted side, so that way the shiny side will be on the back of the signs themselves, giving the effect of being mounted on a metal sheet instead of just on paper. So I've gone ahead and clipped out some of the signs that I want to make, and now I'm applying them to the double-sided sticky tape. I don't trim them out first, I just apply them in a long sheet, and then I'll come back, and the aluminum of the can is thin enough that I can just use the scissors to cut with. So here I am just trimming off the excess paper, and like I said, the aluminum can is thin enough that I can just use this pair of scissors and start trimming around. It's tedious work, but it goes pretty quickly. So now that I've got the sign trimmed out, I'm going to go ahead and make the post for it. And what I found works okay is I just take some copper wire that I stripped out of some old Cat5 network cable. It works well if you can find it. They're solid strands of about 26 gauge wire, and I stripped the insulation off and trim them to a little bit longer than you're going to need. I'm building on foam insulation so I can stick these in and plant the signs. Now you're thinking these pieces of wire are crooked or bent or whatever, so you put them on the board on your workbench. You take a board of any kind and you start rolling them back and forth, kind of like you did when you were a kid with Play-Doh making worms. And if you roll back and forth enough, eventually they will start to straighten out. And this works pretty well for different lengths of wire. I've done it with longer lengths to create tubing. So you can see here, once I've rolled it a few times, and it doesn't take long, but you get a straight enough piece that you can now use as a signpost. So here I'm going to go ahead and apply the posts to the signs themselves. I just work on a piece of wax paper, put a dab of super glue on the wax paper, and then dip the end that I need to glue to the sign into the glue itself, and then that way you don't get too much glue. You don't have to worry about applying it every time. So one of the things I do is to just align the sign, and my fingers are in the way and you can't really see what I'm doing, but I'm just working on aligning the sign and the post itself with the glue. And then once I've got it aligned, let it set and sit for a bit. So for the next project I'm just going to show you here is the asphalt technique that I've learned. So I'm just using some basic paints bought from Michael's or your local craft shop. They're just acrylic paints. I start with a gray, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a lighter color on the, a darker color on the outside of the road, working into a lighter color to show wear on the road. So I'm just mixing it up on a piece of foam, and what I'm going to use is the cosmetic wedges that I have there just to the top of my hand, and you just start dabbing on. You get the wedge good and wet, and then start dabbing on. And this foam is just it can be any color, but it happened to come with something I bought, and it's got a good rough texture to it, so it takes the paint well, and you just start dabbing it on, applying it liberally. You got to work it into the cracks a little bit. So you just keep working it in, turning the applicator to hide the edges, and you'll be able to blend this a little bit more later with a paintbrush. So if you don't hide the edges now, that's okay. So here what I'm doing is actually coming back and putting a little bit of a darker color on the outer edges, the very edge of the road, and you can kind of see I'm drawing the paint a little bit. So I'm blending the light gray and the darker gray, and then I'm putting just a streak down the middle just to again simulate where the tires aren't going. And so I've mixed a lighter color here, and now I'm going to come back and in the areas that are still green, applying the lighter color. So this would be like where the tires of the cars and trucks roll. And so again, you're working to blend all the colors together. And if it's a little bit of a mishmash, that's okay. Obviously there's no conformity in nature in the way things. So once I've applied the paint, I come back, and I didn't show it here, but I dip the paintbrush in some water and then draw it along the lines just to blur and take off the sharp edges. And then this is kind of the cooking show technique, but this is just a sample of what I did previously. So you can kind of see I just blended them all together and the colors kind of form. And the great thing about this foam is it gives you a good texture, and the paint allows you to work as you will, darkening certain areas. The one downside, as you can see here, is this acrylic paint isn't meant for plastics necessarily, and this foam seems to not really grab it. So I'm working on a technique to somehow remedy that, but more to come on that. So one of the great things about this technique is the fact that it's very easy to create patches, and you can see here I've just gone ahead and cut a section out of the road itself, and now from this darker area I'm just cutting out an equal size section, and you can pop it out and place that into the open area, and now you've basically got a patch in the road. I did this on a couple of the roads that I worked on. I just cut it out before I painted it a slightly different color, a little bit darker, to simulate a road patch, and then you can come back in and ink it. So no road is complete without lines and lane markers and things like that. So what I did here was I used a piece of cardboard from a notebook, cut out some slots in it to represent markers on the road, and using Sharpie paint markers, you can go ahead and use the template to start drawing the lines in place. And so what I do is you got to start the marker and you draw it into place. And I draw 2 segments, and then once I've got the 2 segments in place, you lift it up and move the segments over one. Then that way you're always in line and always evenly spaced apart. The great thing about these markers is they do bleed a little bit, but that's alright, because if you ever look at the markers on most roads, they're not really uniform and they've started to fade and crack and things like that. So I apologize. As I started to do this part, I didn't realize my SD card was full. My kids have been recording a lot. But anyway, long story short, so I started trimming out the Clever Model sidewalks. And I had a piece of sidewalk that I had already trimmed in styrene, and so I placed that over the top of the Clever Models printout that I had and trimmed it up, so you can see that up at the top there. And so what I'm doing here is, this is a styrene piece that I trimmed, and using just some basic double-sided sticky tape, I'm applying that here to the styrene itself. So again, I apologize, some of the footage was deleted, but after I applied the trimmed out Clever Models sidewalks to the styrene, I went ahead and took the silver paint Sharpie marker and painted the edges, and the silver actually matches the color of the sidewalk itself pretty well, so it hides the edge of the styrene. So you can see here, this is the finished result. This is a piece that I've got a plan for. So I'll go ahead and take the remainder of it and apply it to the other sidewalks. And this is sidewalk from one of the Walther's Cornerstone kits. So I'll trim it accordingly and continue on. I'm pretty impressed with the detail of their models. And I think these sheets were $2.50 a piece, so not too bad.
Well, thanks again everyone for coming back, and I know this video was a little bit hodgepodge. It was kind of all over the place. It wasn't anything in particular. It was a little bit quick, but these are just some of the things that I've been working on, and I thought, well, you know, I'll record these and hopefully throw it out there, let everybody, give everybody an update as to what I'm working on. I can't promise I'm going to be back shooting a lot. I'm going to shoot as much as I can here, even if they're maybe just short updates. Not that you guys want to hear it. I know I was accused of rambling on previous videos, but it's the end of the video, so you've already seen what you need to see. If you stuck around this long, well, you're all the way through now. But I'm helping coach my daughter's basketball team. I'm coaching a boys' basketball team. My kids talked me into Taekwondo this year, so I've joined that. And to say that my model railroading has taken a back seat would be a little bit of an understatement. So I get down here as often as I can, and when I can, sometimes, you know, like I said, sometimes I just start working and don't have time to record, and then don't have time to edit and stuff like that. So, but enough on that, excuses. I hope everyone has a great Christmas, a happy New Year, and happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah. Whatever your holiday of choice might be, hope it's a great one. And we'll see you in the next video, whenever that might be.